Superstition had never been a part of my belief system. Despite the prevalence of urban legends and ghost stories, I had never been particularly interested in them. However, my confidence was shaken during my initial night on the job as a security guard at a 24-hour gas station located on the outskirts of town. Keeping a check on the place and dealing with the occasional intoxicated driver or disruptive teen was supposed to be all it was intended to be, a late-night job to pay the rent, and keeping an eye on the parking lot to make sure nobody strayed too far. When I applied, I certainly felt that way. I didn't mind working alone, and the hours were reasonable and peaceful. Actually, I liked it better. Seated at the end of a long, twisting road that appeared to go on forever, the petrol station was an unappealing, rundown structure across the parking lot. Lengthy shadows were created by the brilliant fluorescent lights that flickered above the pumps, which served as the major attraction. It was equally unremarkable on the inside. A small fridge full of sodas and energy drinks, a plethora of chips and snacks, and the counter where my colleague Ray worked behind the register. Ray, who appeared to be in his late 40s or early 50s, bore the scars of a guy who had worked the night shift for far too long. I wondered whether he ever slept because his complexion was pale, his hair was falling out, and his eyes had that distant, glazed-over appearance. He didn't speak much unless he was forced to, but he did tell me that he had worked at the gas station for years. Ray sat behind the bar tonight, peering into the parking lot and sipping a cup of coffee as I cranked in and got my flashlight. When I walked in, he gave me a subtle nod but initially said nothing. Doing so was unnecessary. "Tell me how you're doing for the night." As an attempt at small chat, I inquired. Ray paused to drink his coffee before responding. The heavy cigarette use gave him a gravelly voice. "Still, that's the way I prefer it. Does anything need my attention?" As I settled in for what I anticipated to be a quiet night, I inquired. Before returning to the parking lot, Ray's gaze briefly grazed me. "Yes, in fact," he gently remarked, "it is important that you are aware of the following. Most of the time, it's rules meant to keep you out of trouble." Furrowed brow erect. "Rules, for example." "What is it?" As if to check that no one was there, Ray leaned in closer after casting a quick glance over his shoulder. "I'll keep you apprised of them all night long," he promised. "Doing it that way is easier. When it comes to some things, you really must be there to grasp them." By the time he added, "And one more thing, don't ask too many questions," I was on the verge of pressing him for clarification. Slowly, the night went by. It felt like the hours went on forever. Not much transpired, with the exception of the rare vehicle stopping in to refuel, while keeping a watch on the pumps. I went around the parking lot and surveyed the perimeter. While he watched, Ray continued to sip his coffee at the counter, up until about 1 a.m. A moment before, Ray abruptly cleared his throat. "There's something you need to know about," he said, his voice low and serious. "First rule." I stopped mid-step and turned toward him. "Yeah, if you see a little boy coming," Ray continued, "around 7 or 8 years old, wearing a red jacket, don't talk to him, don't even acknowledge him, just let him do what he does and leave. He comes around sometimes, usually late at night, but whatever you do, don't speak to him. If he asks you for help, ignore him." I stared at Ray, waiting for the punchline, but there wasn't one. He was dead serious. "What happens if I talk to him?" I asked. Ray didn't look at me. "You don't want to know," he muttered. I didn't press him further, but the thought of a little boy wandering around the gas station in the middle of the night was unsettling enough. A few hours later, after another lull in activity, Ray spoke up again. "Second rule," he said without looking at me. I was restocking the drinks in the cooler, and I stopped listening. "Stay out of the shadows," Ray continued. "If the lights flicker and go out, stay where it's lit. Don't walk into the dark corners. You might see things moving in the dark, shadows that don't belong to anything. Whatever you do, don't follow them. They'll lead you somewhere you can't come back from." I glanced out the window at the flickering parking lot lights. They were old, barely working half the time, but Ray's tone made me uneasy. "Have you seen the shadows?" I asked, my curiosity getting the better of me. Ray shrugged, sipping his coffee. "Once or twice, don't care to see them again." Around 3 a.m., the gas station was completely silent. No customers, no cars. Just the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. I was getting restless when Ray spoke up again. "Third rule," he said. "That door in the back of the station, the one marked employees only, don't open it. Don't knock on it. Don't go near it. Just ignore it. It's better that way." I frowned, looking toward the back of the station. There was a door there, old and scratched up with a faded sign that read, "Employees only." I hadn't paid much attention to it before. "What's behind it?" I asked, though I had a feeling I already knew Ray's answer. "Don't know, don't care to find out." Ray replied, "But sometimes you'll hear noises coming from back there, scratching, tapping, maybe even voices. Ignore it, the door stays closed." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words settle over me. The hours dragged on. It was nearing 4 a.m. and fatigue was starting to set in. The hum of the gas station's lights, the soft hum of the refrigerator units, and Ray's occasional cryptic advice were all that kept me company. That's when Ray hit me with the fourth rule. "Last thing you need to know for now," he said, his voice just above a whisper. "The light in the parking lot, the big one near the pumps. Make sure it stays on. If it goes out, you need to fix it right away." I raised an eyebrow. "Is there a plan B in case it fails?" Ray looked at me angrily as he put down his coffee cup. "You certainly do not want their rival in the event that it goes out." Nobody asked me who they were. After 4 in the morning, the petrol station experienced wrong. As I was restocking shelves, I realized that Ray had disappeared from behind the counter. Neither had I heard him depart. It seemed like he had disappeared. "Hey, Ray." As I approached the counter, I yelled out. No response. There was no trace of him anywhere in the petrol station. No matter how much I searched the aisles, the restrooms, and even the outside boundary, the shadows in the far corners of the station were dark and gloomy, and the back door remained shut. A growing terror gripped me. Ray had disappeared. Somewhat oppressively heavy air pressed down on me, sending shivers up my spine. A rule sprung into my head out of nowhere: the darkness. I stayed out of the shadows and under the bright lights. Anxiety is setting in. Searching for him made me feel like I had broken a rule, but I couldn't put my finger on it. A fluttering light in the parking lot, fumbling with the switch on the side of the building. I raced outdoors as my stomach churned. The light flickered back on after a few excruciating seconds. I let out a shaky breath when the parking lot was illuminated by that comforting light. Ray was still seated behind the desk when I returned inside, as if he had never departed. "Please tell me where you went." My voice was louder than I had intended when I requested. "You were nowhere to be found." As he sipped his coffee, Ray remained oblivious. "Why did you even bother looking for me? And that concludes the rules." In a quiet, weary voice he warned, "Don't look for me if I vanish. The thing that returns won't be me." He then warned against communicating with the specter. "Downplay its significance. Act as if it doesn't exist." My pulse was pounding as I gazed at him. "Please tell me what on earth you're referring to." When Ray did look up at me, he did so with emotionless eyes. "A rule has been violated." My chest tightened with anguish, disorientation and anxiety whirling around within me. Was he trying to trick me? Without Ray, I don't understand why this object is warning me not to communicate with it. As my thoughts raced, I cautiously withdrew. "Would you believe it if I told you this wasn't Ray? For what reason would it give me a self-alert?" It was as if the shadows cast by the station's corners were moving, getting darker, and eventually reaching out to me. I remained motionless while the light in the parking lot flashed once more. Was paralyzed with shock and fear. The darkness seemed to be coming to life, slithering, coiling in on itself. My thoughts were racing, yelling at me to remain in the light and adhere to Ray's regulations. It was as if the shadows were encircling the store, and I was unable to move because my legs felt like lead. An abrupt, low-volume hum permeated the room. The station seemed to be swaying from an unknown force. The parking lot lights started to flicker more erratically, illuminating the inside with short, intense bursts. Something about Ray's comment regarding the lights lingered in my thoughts. If they go out, they will return. I forced myself to swallow and get up and moving because you don't. I leaped to my feet, and dashed for the switch that turned on the lights in the parking lot. As my fingers clumsily grappled with the weathered lever affixed to the wall, I experienced a brief moment of vertigo upon realizing it was not functioning. The hum grew louder, and the shadows moved forward as if they were liquid night, moving across the floor. I yanked the switch harder, making a desperate grunt. Reigniting the parking lot lights was a little difficult, brilliant and intense, driving the darkness deeper into the recesses of the room. My chest ached from the exertion, and I sank against the wall, gasping for air, despite the light being on and the shadows receding. The station still seemed unsafe. Their presence lingered, and I could sense their anticipation of the light's eventual failure. Uncomfortably, I couldn't help but worry if the light was indeed the sole obstacle preventing them from proceeding. Next up was Ray, or whoever was masquerading as him. Perched presumptively behind the counter, he continues to sip his coffee. His last rule weighed hard on my thoughts. It won't be me that returns. Stay away from it. Downplay its significance. Did this truly just transpire? Am I in violation of the rule? Or was Ray lying to me, or whatever was covering his body, as I stood there, fixated on him? My hands quivered. It was as if I were playing a mad game. Returning, he went. Return to his coffee, as if it were of no consequence after informing me of a rule that may no longer be applicable. What followed was a series of events that began with my tentative strides ahead. The gas station was filled with the gentle sound of a chime. The entrance was ajar. I failed to notice its motion. No vehicle had approached the gas stations. Nevertheless, I beheld him as I pivoted around. The child, only around 7 or 8 years old, would have been an accurate guess. Identical to what Ray had said. Even in the faint fluorescent light of the station, his crimson jacket was too brilliant, too vivid to blend in with the otherwise muted nighttime environment. As if bewildered, he stood at the doorway, his eyes wide with begging. My body begged me to lend him a hand. It felt wrong to stand there and act as if he weren't there, to ignore the small sob of a youngster who was fighting back tears. However, I couldn't shake Ray's caution. Stay away from any boy wearing a red jacket. Pay him no mind. The youngster cautiously made his way into the store, his little hands fumbling with his jacket's zipper. Looking directly at me, he said, "Mister," just above a whisper. His voice was gentle. "Assist me, if you can." "Yes." My mom has vanished." My jaw clenched. Ray, or whoever was posing as him, caught my eye. In the boy's presence, he had made no movement and had shown no reaction whatsoever. He seemed oblivious to his presence. Once again, the lad advanced a step closer. "Excuse me." I'm terrified. Cinching my fists, I drew myself to the rule. My heart was pounding as I struggled to control the overwhelming urge to aid a youngster, and the innate terror that warned me something was seriously wrong. As the fluorescent lights buzzed menacingly overhead, the temperature inside the station appeared to decrease. As I concentrated on remaining motionless, my hands quivered. A second time, the lad sniffled. "Do you not want to assist me?" He raised his voice to an almost accusing level. "Oh, please." I caught sight of the flash, the fleeting slip, as tears filled his big eyes and he extended his hand toward me. Although his expression remained unchanged at first, I saw a fleeting glimpse of something uncanny, something icy and empty in his eyes in the low light. A mischievous grin had begun to form on his face, but it was too big and too sharp. In an effort to clear my throat, I retreated a step. As his expression twisted into a mask of fake grief, the youngster emitted a low moan. "Do you not want to assist me?" Someone had altered his voice. The childlike voice had faded. Subsequently, something more ancient and profound lay behind it, resonating off the station's walls. The words resounded. As the sound of his footfall reverberated gently over the floor, I averted my gaze, choosing to ignore the shiver that ran down my spine. The door chimed once again as the sound of his movement gradually diminished. No sign of him. On the counter, I rested my head. I was anxious and my thoughts were racing. Sitting there, Ray or whatever it was watched me. He remained silent, sipping his coffee with expressionless, glassy eyes, and made no comment about the youngster. I cast a quick glance towards the rear of the establishment, where the solitary entrance for the employee stood like a black silhouette. At the conclusion of the corridor, before tonight, I hadn't paid much attention to it, but now it seemed to be the center of all that was wrong with this place. I could barely make out a sound. The faint hum of the station's lights barely masks a gentle scraping. A little beat skipped my heart. I had been forewarned by Ray about the door. Stay away from it. Keep quiet. Avoid it at all costs. The noise, nevertheless, persisted, unsettlingly persistent. The sound had progressed from simple scratching to a subtle tapping, as if someone were banging their knuckles against wood. A gentle, cadenced rap. I was unable to move from the floor. My body froze, couldn't tear my gaze from the entrance. I felt a knot form in my throat as the pounding became increasingly loud and relentless. It was forbidden for me to approach it. However, it wasn't empty. It seemed like the door was drawing me closer to whatever was behind it with each passing second. The pounding came to a sudden halt. A heavy, suffocating stillness pervaded the atmosphere. As I let out a small breath, I felt a little relief in my chest. A squeak came from the door, though minuscule, barely perceptible. Motion, as if someone had rested their weight against it from across the room. There was movement, but neither the knob nor the door would open. Through the door came a faint, soft voice. Exclude me. My feet faltered, and I staggered backward, my pulse racing. The sound was muted and hardly audible, yet it was still identifiable. Behind that door stood someone or something. I couldn't shake the echo of Ray's caution. Enclosed, the door remained so. There was no sign of Ray if he was even still there. When I redirected my attention to the storefront, again the door creaked and the voice got louder, but he just stared ahead, seemingly unconcerned with the sounds around him and with me. Oh God, please let me go. On autopilot, my legs swung. I dashed towards the station's entrance. The voices in my head were begging me to run away from that door. As soon as I went outside, I inhaled deeply of the chilly night air as I walked to the front door. I was not going to let the flickering lights of the parking lot go unattended this time. One more brush with the shadows would be too costly for me. There was nothing else I could afford. My mind was racing with questions as my body shook from terror and tiredness, so I hungered down near the lights. Behind that door, who or what was it? Where was Ray now? Did the being behind the counter actually represent him? What was the reason behind the boy's icy, vacant expression when he gazed at me? There was a little lightening of the sky. Soon, dawn would break. Getting through the night was my only priority. Something else, though, began to feel off while I stood there, staring at the entrance to the station. For an instant, the store's fluorescent lights blinked. I just need that amount of time to observe it. Ray had stepped away from his position behind the counter. Nobody sat in that chair. I felt a chill run down my spine as I glanced around the parking lot. Neither he nor anybody else could be found. As I redirected my attention to the store, my mind racing with confusion, I heard a creak as the door swung open behind me. With great care, I turned around. Standing in the doorway, Ray or someone resembling him stared blankly at me. His skin was pale, and his eyes were far away and glassy. He said nothing and remained still. His last commandment was, "Don't talk to it," and the thought paralyzed me. Downplay its significance. Suddenly, I felt parched. Nobody here. Was Ray? This is impossible. If that wasn't the case, then why was it left in that location? Why had it returned anyway? I retreated while maintaining my focus on the figure as it advanced toward me. Nobody else was it. It certainly wasn't him. The dawn finally crested the horizon, and the parking lot was bathed in a soft, pale light. As I cautiously made my way to my car, I couldn't take my gaze off the mysterious guy positioned at the entrance of the gas station. The sun had set. I had succeeded, however. The anxiety persisted as I drove away from the gas station. I just couldn't let go of the concept. I don't see why it gave me the rules if that wasn't Ray. I mean, what else could it have been trying to hide from me? My time at the gas station came to an end that night, and I have no intention of returning.